Hello traders, because of Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, May the 16th, 2021. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the indices and stocks that moved lower last week on average, while the London Stock Exchange managed to close higher. Most of the stocks that we follow, big cap tech leaders, lost favor to more value-oriented stocks. We did see sentiment shift. It is somewhat more bullish underneath, while breadth has backed off as well. So we have mixed signals with 4 bullish, 13 neutral, and 3 to start off the week. We did see some more hedging as gold shows a potential for a breakout this week, with the S&P 500 4,000 support, the range up to 4,200 into this week. VIX closed on a gravestone doji, taking an absolute drubbing on Friday, closing down more than 4 points. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at the markets. Growth stocks did take a back seat to value last week, bouncing on Friday, but still seeing most of the leaders pulling back for the week. So unless we get back above the 21-day and produce a higher high this week, we'd expect to see value and safety play a major role. As breadth seemed to have a big change last week, we did see histogram back off towards the zero line on the S&P 1500, and the signal line briefly made a change in direction. So it's these changes in direction that alert us to pay attention. And while strength did come in on Thursday and Friday, pushing price action on the spiders back above the 9 and 21 day, RSI's briefly back above 50 as well. We managed about a 4% pullback to the 50-day before bouncing, of course. Volume did pick up on Thursday and Friday, and stochastics is turning. ATR, the range for the day, is picking up as well, which we also saw in the NASDAQ and the Qs, bouncing back just shy of the 50-day. If we don't manage to get back above this area on Monday and Tuesday, that could set a signal through the whole market. So it all depends on those big cap tech stocks that closed lower for the week, and what we see in terms of breadth in the larger market. NYHL and the New York Stock Exchange, 2,700 stocks, a broad measure of market participation. So a very tiny little histogram bar on Friday. Wednesday and Thursday were below the zero line. The moving average is starting to drop going into this week's OPEX. New York Stock Exchange advanced decline, failed to make a higher high, and we did see a trend break of this recent bullish activity. However, we bounced on Friday. We also saw institutions' core portfolio stocks, those 75 stocks most commonly held, bounce at the 50-day moving average. So for this to be a continuation, obviously we need to take out the recent highs. If this is a lower high and we drop back down below the 50-day, we'll be hedging more with inverse related index ETFs and gold, which we'll cover in a few minutes. The caveats, of course, are VIX giving us a green signal, which tells us on this 60-minute time frame to look for higher highs and higher lows, together with a backdrop of the number of bullish stocks pulling back. Note the range in the white area, and when we reach highs or lows, what happens with the markets? The vertical lines demark the peaks or highs, which usually precede a pullback, whereas the dips or valleys usually lead to a rally. So there is a reset of energy, if you will. Fewer stocks are on bullish buy signals. That usually marks a turning point for short-term trading. Taken together with small caps remaining in a range, starting off in February with the highs and the lows leading into last week, we do have a potential for a slight bounce. This would be a risk on indication if small caps pick up the bid this week. In addition to expecting a tighter range in the markets this week on the indices, especially with options expiring on Friday, we tend to see tighter price action. We can also see the cycles in larger indices like the Wilshire 5000 with its cycle just moving sideways and flat on the weekly time frame while trading near all-time highs. Any weakness in the broader market would see this index break trend over the next couple of weeks. We can also see this seasonality in the Wilshire 5000 going into the month of May. We tend to see a little bit less probabilities of higher highs, whereas going into the months of June and July, we tend to see a more bullish performance. If you follow Bloomberg, we tend to see about a 0.2% loss during the month of May, whereas June and July we see markets pick up 2% and 4% respectively, more so with the Nasdaq and with the S&P 500. Taken all together with the indices performance this week, we need to keep an eye out for OPEX into this week as well as what happens on Monday and Tuesday next week. So our view is more one of neutral and potential rotation going into the next 2 weeks. The bond stock ratio between the S&P 500 and the 10-year in the lower panel is telling us to be more cautious to neutral as the red line starts to inflect higher in the short term over the next couple of weeks. However, the longer term trend and these oscillators between the S&P 500 and the long bond, the 30-year versus the 10-year, tells us to continue, is looking for a continuation in the current trend, barring 5 to 10% pullbacks along the way. This cycle usually lasts between the S&P 500 and the 30-year more than 18 months in most cases. In the past that we've seen, doesn't mean we go straight up. This sometimes will oscillate quite a bit. Currently, we're showing a little bit of a peak and could see a little bit more consolidation in the major equity indices in the short term. While there is some buying in the bond market, the 1, the 3, 7, 10, 20, and 30-year bonds, most of them are moving sideways in a range. We'd anticipate that we might continue this week. And as we move out further in the curve to the 20-year, we're below the 50-day and move back above. I would anticipate the top of this range holding for the time being. Therefore, hedges are more interesting in the gold complex. Gold and silver look like they're ready to break out, especially gold. If it gets through 1840, anticipate this trend will accelerate. RSI is above 50 and rising. Volume has been picking up, coupled with the US dollar moving lower, which should lift gold prices and commodities like silver as well, and hopefully push some of the international indices a bit higher as this trend continues lower. Sectors also backed off last week, with strength remaining in materials, metals and mining, retail, and a few other oil and energy related names, while the international markets remain about the same, with most consolidating at the present time, with the value stocks showing a lot of interest: energy, financials, industrials, in addition to retail. We also saw some bullish activity in materials and mining, of course, in addition to the defensive sectors XLP, XLU, and XLV. Most of these stocks from the opening monologue, from the IBD 50, stocks showing relative strength at new highs in white, stocks that are showing rising profit estimates in lime green, and stocks from the blue dot scan in cyan. CanSlim candidates, they all look good and set up for this week. They're from sectors that are showing relative strength, potential rotation, and stocks from the scan that meet our criteria for follow through. Make sure you check them all out. I won't cover them in depth, but we will see what is looking good on the IBD 50. But we will highlight a few of our favorites. Most of the stocks from the IBD 50 and all of the ones from the list, like the rising profit estimates, stocks that funds are buying, etc., aren't at all-time highs, but consolidating near support levels, so we're looking for pushes higher, like 360 Digitech QFIN. Healthcare services, a defensive sector, also seeing stocks that are getting bought, pushing higher, like AMN. AutoNation, no doubt being affected by people going back to work. Looking for the follow-through. Stochastics turning. Volume starting to pick up. Boot Barn and related names in this industry group. Shoes and footwear. Clothing and accessories for people going back to work. Seeing a lot of buying. I wouldn't buy at the high of the day, obviously, or the high of the week, but I would be looking for some consolidation and then a follow-through in this bullish trend. Some of the real estate names like Century Communities. This one has rising profit estimates as well. Looking for a follow-through. REITs, there's many that look good. Volume increasing. RSI above 50, trading in an area of no overhead supply. Crocs, nice little pullback for a follow-through. We're watching for a push higher on Monday and Tuesday. Also watching retail stocks that performed last week to continue with that performance. Nice bullish trend. Pretty clean looking chart on Dick's Sporting Goods, playing on the idea that people are going to want to get out and spend some time in the great outdoors, whereas the trend reflects it, nice and bullish. Not much volatility. Looking for a bullish continuation this week. Stochastics is turning. Volume starting to pick up. Fortinet looking for a follow-through. Again, a stock from the rising profit estimates scan, thanks to Investors Business Daily. Many of the builders pull back early in the week, starting to bounce. Watch for more than just a dead cat bounce and a follow-through in this bullish trend. We also saw that with D.R. Horton and many of the other builders. Some of the software and tech-related names bounced back above the 50-day. We saw Facebook doing the same, even though the Qs and the NASDAQ were not quite there yet. Ally Financial, nice bullish trend. Nice and clean looking chart. Stochastics turning. RSI above 50, volume picking up. Google, another one of those names that are already above the 50-day moving average, despite the Qs being below, as well as Amazon trying to follow through on Friday. Could it be that the individual stocks will move above the 50-day before the actual index? Yet to be seen. We see that with Apple as well, looking for a follow-through here above the 50-day on Friday. Financials fairly well positioned for continuation in this trend as interest rates rise. BlackRock with a nice bounce off the 21-day, looking for a follow-through. Volume starting to pick up, RSI rising. We're also anticipating that energy stocks will continue higher. There are so many of them that are breaking near all-time highs, 52-week highs, that we'd expect to see a follow-through in that industry group. Oil and equipment and oil services, oil exploration and delivery, as well as some of the broadcast and entertainment group, some of the communications stocks like Comcast continues to push higher. ConocoPhillips, another one of those energy names, bouncing at the 50-day, looking for a follow-through. One of the better setups, not quite breaking above the pivot that we saw last week that some of the others are pushing above, like Apache, Marathon Petroleum, EOG Resources, etc. Cowen, looking for a follow-through, nice bullish trend, sideways price action along the 9 and 21-day, tested the 50-day on Wednesday, bounced and followed through. Looking pretty good. Stochastics rising. So these stocks are showing interesting relative strength, even with the markets pulling back dramatically, especially the NASDAQ. These managed to stay above the 50-day moving average. ExxonMobil also looking very good. This went ex-dividend last week on Wednesday. Looks like the trend is about to continue. Flat base, very shallow cup. A handle, if it breaks out, look for a follow-through. Facebook, another one of those big cap tech names. Social media, communications industry group performing quite well thanks to Facebook and others. Bouncing off the 50-day, following through above the 50-day versus what we saw with the Qs below the 50-day. So maybe it is these FANG stocks that push the Qs back above 50-day this week. FedEx providing a nice entry last week on Wednesday into Thursday. Looking for a follow-through and a breakout along with UPS. IDEX Laboratories, Veterinary Sciences, looking for a follow-through here as well. Intuit, following through on tax time. Don't forget to file Monday. JP Morgan, one of the stronger big banks, benefiting from the strength in financials. Johnson & Johnson, nice bounce on Thursday into Friday, looking for a follow-through and a breakout. In addition to the action we saw on Moderna, which bounced at the 50-day on Friday, looking for a push back to the highs again. LPL Financial, also bouncing at the 50-day, look for a push higher back to the top of the range. L3 Harris, I'm also keeping an eye on many of the names in the military, aerospace, and defense stocks. Northrop Grumman, among others, such as Lockheed Martin. Consolidation, together with Raytheon catching a bid last week, RTX volume picking up, RSI rising, threatening a breakout. While some of the hotels also starting to look better. I like Marriott if it gets back above the 50-day, so keep an eye on that. Descending channel, looking for the push higher this week as families and vacationers take to the streets, with additional software names like Microsoft showing a nice performance. A push back above the 21-day with the RSI rising would suggest a retest of these pivots and then potentially 52-week highs. In addition to financials like Moody's Corp breaking back above the 21-day, looking like it's going to test all-time highs. Additional energy names that don't cost that much, looking for a follow-through. National Energy Services. Sherwin-Williams Paints, follow-through, looking for a push off of the 9 EMA and trend continuation. Starbucks looking for the dip to get bought, looking for a push back above the 9 and 21-day. Some of the semis like Texas Instruments looking good. We also took a small position in Intel looking for a follow-through with a tight stop if it loses the 200-day. As investors apparently started picking up shares, maybe some shorts covering as well. Again, stop below the 200-day. Nvidia also pushing back above the 50-day last week on Friday. And those semiconductors, if they can manage to follow through, would help push the semiconductor index back into this range. The cycle is at an extreme, looking for a turn in the short term. U.S. Bancorp, USB, confirming what we're seeing on all the other banks that we favor with a nice bullish trend. Pretty clean looking chart, RSI above 50. And stocks like Walmart with earnings coming out on Tuesday, with Target with earnings on Wednesday. With both looking good going into earnings. Target above its 9 and 21-day near all-time highs. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com with your weekend video newsletter. I didn't cover all of these names, of course, because there's just too many of them. But most of them on the list, if you see something that you're trading, and then look for the watch list to come out later tonight around 11:30, 12 o'clock on the East Coast, 8:30 on the West Coast. Want to get outside? It's a beautiful day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.